What up, y'all? It's Dev. Igby's on his way. See, here he comes. He's right here. We are from the place we like it at Magic, and we have got like 50 Final Fantasy spoilers for you today. The biggest day since the very first day of previews. We have got so much to get to, but we're going to do it a little bit differently than we normally do. Because there were so many cards that were kind of draft chaffy today, for lack of a better term. I guess there are better terms. They're just really, really mean. There were some cards today that weren't so great. So what we're going to actually do is start with some cards I did like for once. There's quite a lot of them, about 20 plus of these that we'll go through that I actually think are cool or have some shot in some format or another. But then we're going to move on to a sort of speed run of all the poopy stuff that we got to see today. I'm doing a full speed run of the set on Thursday night on Twitch, and I need a little bit of practice. So we'll do that, get that scrub finger ready, because at the very end, we're going to talk about my favorite card of the day, and maybe even the actual objectively best card of the day. We'll have to wait and see, but got a lot to go over. Let's go ahead and dive in. I guess we'll start the day with the best of the worst, if you want to call it that. This is just stuff that I didn't have the heart to put into the garbage bin, stuff like Random Encounter and Rufus Shinra. Both of these are either too cool of a design or just too cool of a reference to pass up. Random Encounter over here is 6 mana, 4 and 2 red for a sorcery. Shuffle your library, mill 4 cards. Put each creature card milled this way onto the battlefield. They gain haste at the beginning of your next end step. Return those creatures to their owner's hand. And you can flash this back for a whopping 8 mana, 6 and 2 reds. So that's a really expensive flashback cost for sure. And it's honestly a pretty expensive upfront cost that you could entirely whiff on. It is cool that it at least puts the creatures back in your hand at the end of the turn, and obviously you could hit real big on this, but you have to shuffle your library first, so it really is as random as it can possibly be. If your deck is packed with like 35 creatures and 4 random encounters and a really low land count at that point, then like maybe you can try and make something happen, but to be quite honest here, it mostly looks like a silly reference, and I'm kind of down for those when I see them, like Rufus Shinra, the ultimate nepotism hire here. This is 3 mana, 1 a black and a white. This is a 2/4 legendary human noble. When Rufus Shinra attacks, if you don't control a creature named Darkstar, create Darkstar, a legendary 2/2 white and black dog creature token. So this guy's a little butthole in the boss fight that you have to have with him in Final Fantasy VII, but he doesn't look too intimidating here, to be honest. He does put a good amount of power and toughness on the board, but only when he attacks. If this was an ETB trigger, I might be a little more in, but still not that excited. As an attacks trigger, I really just don't care that much. Sorry, Roof. We also got to see Ring of the Lucy as well as Cloud of Darkness today. Ring of the Lucy, maybe? This is 4 mana for a legendary artifact. You tap it for 2 colorless mana, or you can pay 2, tap it, and pay a life to tap target non-land permanent. So kind of becomes an Icy Manipulator. Icy can tap lands. This can't, and it costs more to activate in a couple of ways than an Icy does. So I shouldn't just call it Icy Manipulator, but that is the most of, sort of what it reminds me of. Later on in the game when you don't necessarily need the mana anymore, or when you absolutely need to shut that guy down, you can just keep a creature from attacking, or maybe from even using, activated abilities on certain parts of the turn. Use it during their upkeep or something. I could see this being all right in some situations, especially that it's, it's just like a Cisei's Ring or a Hedron Archive. Apart from that, a 4 mana artifact that taps for 2 colorless and doesn't come into play tapped or anything like that, can tap immediately when it comes down, is actually not the worst Magic card I've ever seen, to be honest. I could probably see myself playing this from time to time, but I've played, say, Hedron Archive and colorless Ugin decks in Standard recently, and I'm not sure that I'm going to give up the card draw mode in order to play this, but maybe you could find room for some number of both. But Cloud of Darkness is a classic little Necrotal effect, a little removal spell on a body, and I'm kind of always in for those. This is 5 mana, 2 a black and 2 green for a 3/3 legendary avatar with flying. It has Particle Beam. When Cloud of Darkness enters, target creature an opponent controls gets -X until end of turn, X being the number of permanent cards in your graveyard. Permanents, you say, it's not just creatures like it would normally be, so if you've got lands or enchantments or something in there, then it will count those as well, and I think that's actually kind of big, A decent mill deck is going to be able to hit for like -5 to a thing pretty easily, and maybe even much more when this originally comes into play. So kind of like that. You know, it's decently blinkable or bounceable or even reanimatable depending on the situation and what you got to blow up over there. So kind of can't bring myself to hate this. But next, let's look at a couple of chicken flavored abilities. We got Chocobo Kick and Choco Comets here. Now, Chocobo Kick is, I think, actually the better of these two cards. This is 2 mana, 1 and a green for a sorcery. Kicker, return a land you control to its owner's hand. Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to a creature an opponent controls. If this spell was kicked, the creature you control deals twice that much damage instead. So a cool little bite effect and a cool little reference that I always have to point out when I get them and like them. This is from FF4, the fight against the Antlion when you're trying to get the Sand Ruby. You got Rydia and Edward in your party, and Edward keeps hiding because he's a little punk, but Rydia's got to come in there and do the majority of the damage with her summons, and that's exactly what this is depicting. I'm a big fan of this, but in any case, I like that the Chocobo Kick card has kicker. That is very, very clever, and honestly, it's a good little kicker too. You know, this might put you behind a little bit in depending on what you're doing. You know, if you got a lot of ramp, you don't really care about it too much, but the Chocobo decks look like landfall decks, and we've already got some landfall decks in standard. As a matter of fact, it's a landfall card we're going to look at a little later that I think is incredible. But in any case, landfall is trying to be a thing in this set and maybe even in this standard, and a kicker like this is really good for any landfall deck. So kind of a fan of this, and if nothing else, it's a bite effect, and really, even if you have a small creature out, if you're able to double up on the damage it's going to deal when it bites, then that can take out even largish creatures. So again, kind of a big fan of this, but I also kind of popped for Choco Comets. This is 2 red and X for a sorcery that deals X damage to any target. Create a 2/2 green bird creature token with, whenever a land you control enters, this token gets +1/+0 until end of turn. So you can just play this for 2 mana and get the Chocobo and like you're fine. You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of neat, but I will just kind of always pop for any fireball effect. You know, I feel like we are woefully in need of more fireball effects in standard. And even though we probably have a few better ones that aren't seeing play right now even, but have seen play in the past. There's a Gruul one in standard that has been like dangerous in standard before, but really doesn't see too much play anymore. So, you know, a fireball effect won't necessarily see all the play, don't get me wrong, but I just tend to really, really like these. And when they put a creature on the table too, like, yeah, I'm kind of all in. Now, we got a couple of equipments today that I think are a cut above the average equipment as well. We got Red Mages Rapierre, as well as Dark Knight's Greatsword. Now, the Rapierre over here is 2 mana, 1 and a red for an artifact. It's an equipment that equips for 3, but it has job select. Equipped creature has, whenever you cast a non-creature spell, this creature gets +2/+0 until end of turn, and it also becomes a wizard in addition to its other types, which is neat because you can play it alongside like Harmonic Prodigy or something and get this thing to trigger twice whenever you cast a non-creature. It's also not specifically instants or sorceries. It's yet another non-creature cast trigger, and I just think those are like way, way better in terms of commander at the very least. But even in standard, where you can cast your Corey Steel Cutter or something and get a +2/+0 trigger on the guy. So, and you know, it doesn't cost all the mana in the world to equip once the job select dude is dead. So I don't know, there's a few things that I actually really like about this. I don't think that it's like coming to a standard near you or anything like that, but in certain decks this could actually do like some work. Not all the work, but some work. But as far as Dark Knight's Greatsword goes, this doesn't look like much, but it's the exact kind of equipment I like. 3 mana, 2 and a black for an equipment with job select. Equipped creature gets +3/+0 and is a knight in addition to its other types. Chaos Bringer is its equip cost. Pay 3 life. Activate only once each turn. So you can't just like put this out and then drain yourself of all the life and have a huge Death Shadow or something like that on the table. You can only do it once a turn, but I don't really care about that. I don't care about breaking the card. I think the card might just be okay. I think that effectively 0 equip cost on this is a huge deal. And again, not sure that it's quite standard power level, but a free equip cost is something that you always got to point out. But we also got to see Thunder Magic and Rook Turret here. Both of these are kind of normal cards, but they're cool. Thunder Magic is a single red for an instant with tiered. I tend to like these. If you want to just cast normal old Thunder, you pay 0 extra mana and have Thunder deal 2 damage to a creature. If you want to cast Thundara, that'll cost you 3 extra mana to deal 4 damage to a creature. But if you want to cast Thundega, that's going to be a 6 extra mana, my friend. So 7 total mana to deal 8 damage to a creature. So if you want to take out nearly anything in the game of Magic, apparently it's going to cost you 7 mana in your red deck. It's uncommon, again, to see this kind of spell in red that's capable of dealing with so much For a lot of mana, yes, but some decks might not care so much. A Rook turret isn't actually all that special, but I like stuff like this. It's 4 mana, 3 and a blue for a 3/3 artifact creature. It's a construct with flying. Whenever another artifact you control enters, you may draw a card. If you do, discard a card. Pretty cool. It's not like we haven't seen anything like this ever before, but obviously in Commander, man, like artifacts can come into play all willy-nilly helter-skelter and stuff on your side of the table. You can get a ton of artifacts in one turn depending on what you're doing with treasure tokens or just casting like eggs or other small artifacts or something. So I don't know, man, this could get you a bunch of loot triggers, and that could be something in like your budget artifacts matter deck in Commander, and like it is possible to build one of those, I promise you. But next, let's take a look at Guillot King of the Dwarves. I've just met him in Final Fantasy IV, as well as Lunatic Pandora. Now, Guillot is 2 mana, Boros colors, for a 1/1 legendary dwarf noble with double strike. Whenever Guillot or another dwarf you control enters, and whenever an equipment you control enters, you may discard a card. If you do, draw a card. So you get a fencing ace, if nothing else. you'll at least have a fencing ace. And honestly, the rummage ability on the thing is kind of okay. Not sure that it really makes equipment decks in standard, to be honest, but it is a little bit of filtering at a relatively low cost, and there might be some commander decks that want a card like this. Kind of hard to truly envision where it shows up, because again, I think there's even better slots in commander equipment decks than to play this guy, but those decks need churn, so he could be an important piece to some, again, more budgety kind of builds. But lally-ho, my friend. But Lunatic Pandora's neat, man. It's kind of a Spine of Ish-Saw kind of ability. This is 1 mana for a legendary artifact. You can pay 2 and tap it to surveil 1, or you can pay 6, tap it and sack it to destroy a non-land permanent. Okay, we're kind of talking a little bit. You know, there's always been effects like this in Commander. Spine is not the only one. There's a few. I feel like they print one every like 5 sets or so now. It's like a colorless thing that can blow up permanents for this huge cost, and we get another one here, but it's actually really, really cheap to play in the first place, and on its way to doing what it's supposed to do and just blowing up for story purposes. Like it can surveil for you from time to time. Probably not as good as like a Maze Mind Tome or something for similar purposes, right? But this will stay on the table all game until it eventually does something cool, and you can do it at instant speed, and I think that's worth pointing out. So it's kind of a lot I like about this card. Not sure that it's absolutely one of the best of the worst cards today, but it is a nice little common for sealed, for instance. And again, I think you could make an argument for a commander deck here or there, especially 5 years ago. I'm not sure about anymore, but there was a point where this card is cribbing some like pretty high profile cards in Commander, so I kind of like it. Hello again, everybody. Now that was 12 cards or so that I think might not be the best Magic cards either one of us have ever seen. I think we can both admit to that, but there's at least some stuff you could conceive to do with them. But now we're going to take a step up in quality, at least in my opinion, and look at 11 more cards that I think might really have something to do in some format or another. Now we'll start this section with kind of a bang. Both of these cards look like pretty sick little cards, man. We got Grahatia and Delivery Mughle to look at. Now Grahatia is 5 mana. That's kind of steep, but I like the text box for what it's worth. 4 and a white for a 3/5 legendary cat archer with reach. It has Allegan Eye. Whenever 1 or more creatures and or artifacts you control die, draw a card. This ability triggers only once each turn. I think I missed the other on that. Yeah, whenever 1 or more other creatures and or artifacts you control die. It is not actually a terrible text box, kind of reminiscent of like a Morbid Opportunist or something like that, that also includes artifacts. So if you sack a treasure token or something, you will draw a card once a turn. If you sack a treasure token on your opponent's turn, you're going to draw a card. So that actually seems like it could be worth it. Although, again, 5 mana seems steep. We find room for a lot of relatively expensive, white effects in Commander that do really cool stuff. And I think that this might not be as powerful or impactful as some of that other stuff, but it is pretty reliable card draw, all things considered. So kind of like this. But Delivery Mughle I like too. This is 4 mana, 3 and a white for a 3/2 Mughle with flying. When it enters, search your library and or graveyard for an artifact card with mana value 2 or less, reveal it, put it into your hand. If you search your library this way, shuffle. So at the very least, this is going to go get, your Talisman or your Signets or your Soul Ring or something. Like every single Commander deck has cards that Delivery Mughle can search up. But there's obviously plenty of other decks that are going to have like pinpoint things this needs to to search up like an Isochron Scepter or something that it can go get for them, and that is kind of a big deal. We'll move on to both Magic Damper and Diamond Weapon here. Now, Magic Damper is a single blue mana for an instant. Target creature you control gets +1/+1 and gains hexproof until end of turn. Untap it. So a kind of shore up adjacent effect, you know. It's always good to see these for a single blue. Blue really knows how to protect its creatures, Bubba. And this is a nice little, you know, budgety way of doing so. It's not like we haven't seen effects like this before, but a lot of them are playable in Standard when we do see them, and Shore Up has seen its share of play as well. And, you know, I could see this being very similar. So if you're looking for a way to, you know, protect your dudes or something, and all you really have is commons that you drafted or opened up in your box or something, then yeah, I mean, this will probably be a decently playable card. But we also got Diamond Weapon here. This costs 9 mana, sort of, 7 and 2 green for an 8/8 legendary artifact creature elemental. So cool. This spell costs 1 less to cast for each permanent card in your graveyard. It has reach, and it's immune. Prevent all combat damage that would be dealt to Diamond Weapon. That's cool, whether it's attacking or blocking or who cares. Prevent all the damage. I kind of like that. And I also kind of like the fact this is a 2 mana 8/8. That said, a lot of those decks, those like graveyard-centric up the beanstalk decks, for instance, already have a ton of like black creatures that they can play for 1 mana that effectively have the same sort of line of text on it, right? The cost reduction for the permanents in your yard. And those decks haven't really broken through, but they do show up from time to time. So there's a lot to talk about with this card. Like, is it good enough? Is it big enough? Is it fast enough? All that stuff. I think that it might be riding the line and really help an archetype that's been sort of on the fringes. Or it might do absolutely nothing. I don't know, your guess is as good as mine. So let's move on to a couple of cards that I am actually really stoked for. It's Cornered by Black Mages and Mycetian Elder. Both of these create those little 0/1 black wizard guys, and these are like my favorite thing in the set. But Cornered by Black Mages is 3 mana, 1 and 2 black for a sorcery. Target opponent sacrifices a creature of their choice. Create a 0/1 black wizard creature token with, whenever you cast a non-creature spell, this token deals 1 damage to each opponent, and it has a really, really cool art. I like that it's just a bunch of black mages. That's awesome. But yeah, slick card right here. Probably going directly into Black Waltz number 3 commander, and at least it does that. But it's a removal spell that puts one of these dudes into play, and that's actually good. Like, dare I say, that might actually be kind of good. Now, Mycetian Elder is a body that puts one of those guys into play. This too costs 3 mana, but in this case it's 2 and a red. For a human wizard, it's a 1/3. When it enters, you get one of those guys. So that's sick. You can bounce this or blink this, you know, or whatever, and just get a bunch of these wizards. So I like stuff like this a lot, man. In some ways, I like this more than Queen Brawn, which has to like wait to attack to make one of them or whatever. This is just an interest trigger for the exact same mana cost, and I think that's kind of hype. So these are just a couple of little commons, but they help out a budget deck that I'm already building that it really looks like we're going to be looking at early on this season. But apart from that, man, these are just solid little limited cards. I really like these 0/1 guys, just to reiterate on that 1,000 times. They're my favorite part of this set, and any like cheap way of getting one of those that also does something cool for you, like destroy a creature or sacrifice a creature or whatever, it's actually kind of a big game in some ways. I think these cards are almost playable. But next, let's look at a couple of more chicken flavored cards. They're pretty tender. We got Side Quest Raise a Chocobo and Chocobo Racetrack here, which I think a lot of people are going to like. But Side Quest Raise a Chocobo almost looks pretty strong, man. This is 2 mana, 1 and a green for a 2/2. Well, it's not a 2/2 yet. It's 1 and a green for an enchantment. When it enters, you get a 2/2 green bird creature token with, whenever a land you control enters, this token gets +1/+0 till end of turn. At the beginning of your first main phase, if you've got 4 or more birds, transform it and you get Black Chocobo. This is a 2/2 bird right here. When this permanent transforms into Black Chocobo, search your library for a land card, put it on the field, tap, shuffle up, and it's got landfall. Whenever a land you control enters, birds you control get +1/+0 until end of turn. So again, man, pretty strong looking card for the Chocobo deck. Once you do flip it over, its ramp and the landfall ability switches to all of your birds, and that is actually really cool for just a 2 mana initial investment. I think this is a really good piece for the potential like Bant Birds deck, not just in Standard, but obviously Commander, if you want to build the Bant Bird Commander guy. Like, this definitely goes in, but just a really cool, like, well-designed card that I actually think they pushed just slightly into some form of playability. But Chocobo Racetrack is probably not super Standard playable, but this is definitely a heck of a Commander card. Reminds me of some stuff we already have, and redundancy is always good. 5 mana, 3 3 and 2 green for an artifact with landfall. Whenever a land you control enters, you get a 2/2 green bird creature token with. Whenever a land you control enters, this token gets +1/+0 until end of turn. When it comes down to it, it's not Rampaging Balos or Rampaging Balos. You're not getting like 4/4s or anything, but you are in some ways getting the next best thing. These aren't tiny creatures, and they do benefit from your landfall strategy too. So I think this goes directly into a bunch of landfall commander decks, and honestly, I might try to force this one in standard for a while before I stop doing that, but still, cool reference. I do like racing Chocobos some of the time in the gold saucer, but altogether, I'm not sure that it's as good for a format like standard as SideQuest is, even though I don't know how good SideQuest is either. These are both just noteworthy cards. But next, let's look at a couple of rares before we get back to a lower rarity card that I actually like way more, and then we're going to get ready to close the video out. Here's Cipher. We were all waiting on Cipher, at least like a lot of us were. Cipher Almasi is 4 mana, 3 and a red for a 3/4 legendary human knight. Whenever a creature you control attacks alone, it gains double strike till end of turn. Little exalted double strike there. This also has Fire Cross. Whenever Cipher deals combat damage to a player, you may cast target instant or sorcery card with mana value 3 or less from your yard without paying its mana cost. If that spell would be put into your graveyard, exile it instead. And of course, if he attacks alone, he'll have double strike, so he'll get to double cast something. But you better make sure you hit, Bubba. You really better. And honestly, 3 mana or less is a pretty good spread of important casting costs, right? There's a lot of powerful spells you can cast in any format. With that sort of restriction, you know, you can cast stock up in standard right now if this thing gets through for combat damage, but honestly, it's a little bit too expensive, I think, for most competitive environments, but I don't know, it could be a fun little thing to build around from time to time in Commander. I just don't know that it necessarily goes anywhere. This is kind of cool, but it's one of those kind of cool cards that I'm not sure is cool enough. So let's move on to another rare from FF8 today. It's Memories Returning. 4 mana, 2 and 2 blue for a sorcery. Reveal the top 5 of your library. Put one of them into your hand, then choose an opponent. They put one on the bottom of your library. Then you put one into your hand. Then they put one in the bottom. Put the other into your hand. This has flashback for 9 mana, 7 and 2 blues. So you are kind of playing a game of like, you know, choosing teams with your opponent. You get first choice. Pick the absolute best one of the top 5 of your library, put it in your hand. Your opponent picks the one they really don't want you to have that you didn't already get. You know, and they put that on the bottom. Then you pick your third draft pick, your second draft pick, really. Put that in your hand. And you basically continue until there are no cards left from the top 5. So this is going to put 3 cards into your hand for 4 mana. And that is not bad almost no matter what, especially considering that you do get first pick. At instant speed, we would definitely be talking, but I don't think we are. I don't think we're having much of a discussion at all at the end of the day. So I'll move on to my favorite lower rarity card of the entire day. And honestly, this might be my favorite card of the day. It really might be. This is a lowly common. It's Sabotender. This is 2 mana, 1 and a red for a 2/1 plant with reach and landfall. Whenever a land you control enters, this creature deals 1 damage to each opponent. So I feel like I should bring up Pauper for the first time in the entire preview season. There have been some decent looking Pauper cards to me, like Black Mage's Rod. Looks like a fine card for honestly similar reasons to this. You know, a 2 mana thing that like pings the opponent could be okay at common. And this is effectively, you know, an iridescent Vine Lasher at common. It costs twice as much. Although I will say sometimes it costs 33% less. Really depends on what you're doing with your Vine Lasher. But I guess if you're paying that much for Vine Lasher, then you're getting, you know, 2 of it. That's not necessarily the case. You'll only ever get 1 of this. You can't, you know, offspring it or anything, but 2 mana is not too much to ask for this landfall ability. You know, it wasn't long ago we were paying 4 mana on like Spitfire Lagak for this ability, and it hits each opponent. It's not a target opponent thing, so that's really, really important in the commander environment specifically, but it's still really good in standard, where now you have like a red-black landfall thing going on, maybe a Jund landfall deck. Can we talk? I think we can have coffee, but yeah, like a Jund landfall thing that has, you know, iridescent Vine Lasher in the 1-drop slot, this in the 2-drop slot, and some ramp in the 3 and 4s, yeah, I think you could actually get up to some real nonsense with it, man. I have no idea why this is a common, but I fully support it. This will be one of the first cards I order from this set. Hello again, it's my stupid face. There's still one more rare that I want to talk about today that I'm kind of way too jacked about, but so is half the internet, so at least I don't feel alone. That said, we got some business to attend to. It is time to speedrun every single one of these, maybe not super great cards from today. There's like 37 of them. Let's see how quickly we can get through it. Set your timers and go. Thief's Knife, Adventurer's Airship, and Crossroads Village are our first three cards of this section. Knife is 3 mana, 2 and a blue for an equipment that equips for 4, but does have job select. Equipped creature gets +1/+1, has whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, draw a card, and is a rogue, in addition to its other types. So you get a little Ophidian type deal here. Nothing that we haven't seen before, for sure, right? Adventurer's Airship, on the other hand, is 3 mana for a 3/2 vehicle with flying that crews for 2. Whenever this vehicle attacks, draw a card, and then discard a card. Oh my god, it's Smuggler's Copter, but fixed this time. You know, it crews for more, it's got 1 less toughness, it costs 1 more mana, and when you make all of those alterations, it is just not Smuggler's Copter anymore, so I really wouldn't freak out about this one, but it looks okay in limited. Crossroads Village is a town that's a land. Whenever this land enters, it does so tapped, and you choose a color. You can tap it and add a mana of the chosen color. Again, we've seen this card quite a few times, I want to say, but this time it has town on it. But I will say I kind of do sometimes like these in like Commander. If you're really strapped for cash and you need kind of dual lands, or you're playing a bunch of different colors and you need lands that make any color, you don't mind a land entering tap some of the time. So like, I'll take this in a deck or two. Probably the absolute best of the worst cards is Crossroads Village, but there's also Swallowed by Leviathan, Monk's Fist, and Iron Giant. Now, Swallowed by Leviathan is 3 mana, 2 and a blue for an instant. Choose a spell, surveil 2, then counter the chosen spell, unless its controller pays 1 for each card in your graveyard. So again, this one doesn't look like dog water or anything, depending on how many cards are in your graveyard. This could just be a hard counter. The problem is, cancel is also a hard counter at the exact same mana value, so you're really working to get a hard counter out of this, but Surveil 2 may be worth it to you, especially if you're trying to put cards into the graveyard. This could do a lot of that work for you. So again, I can't say that I absolutely hate this, but I don't think that it's coming anywhere near most formats. Same thing's true with Monk's Fist. I like the reference, but they kind of did the monk dirty here. Technically the most physically powerful character in FF1. But here's what he does. 2 mana for an equipment with job select that equips for 2. Equipped creature gets +1/+0 and is a monk in addition to its other types. Cool. I get a 2/1. I get a 2/1 and because of my job select. And even when the 2/1 dies, I guess I could pay equip 2 to get +1/+0, a whole +1/+0. Just not exactly, I think, where we want to be for the most part. So we'll move on to Iron Giant. 7 mana for a 6/6 artifact creature that also happens to be a demon. Interesting. Vigilance, Reach, and Trample. Well, often I have to point out demon because standard, even though the standard demons deck is kind of on its last legs at this point, I think. But in any case, that's usually why I point out demons. I really don't think it matters here. 7 mana. I think that, sure, it's got some cool, abilities on it. It's got a nice keyword soup, but I think that you could definitely find other cards for 7 mana that you could be reanimating or ramping into with a much tastier keyword soup on them. So this is just a nice little piece for limited, I think, and that's all it really needs to be. There's also Preche's Wanderings, Laporet Scout, as well as Gubu Gardener over here. Some kind of tough pronunciations in this section, but Wanderings is 3 mana, 2 and a green for an instant. Search your library for a basic land or town card, put it on the battlefield tap, shuffle up. When you search your library this way, you put a +1/+1 counter on target creature that you control. So this is the 3 mana ramp with upside spell, but note that it is instant speed, and you just don't see that every single day. You could also use this as a combat trick. Put a +1/+1 counter on a guy, blow somebody out, and get a landfall trigger during a combat step. Maybe I misread this at first. I just assumed this was a sorcery, and I probably should have put it in the better cards. I would probably score this a little bit higher than a lot of the cards we've already looked at, and it's definitely the best card on screen. Laporet Scout, on the other hand, I'm not so sure about. 3 mana, 2 and a green for a 3/2 Rabbit Scout. Whenever another creature you control enters, this creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn. Why can't it be counters, man? Even if it was counters, I still wouldn't be super duper happy about it, but not a super exciting thing. And neither is Gubu Gardener. Is that right? Gubu Gardener? This is 2 mana, 1 and a green for a 1/3 plant beast that taps for green. So a Druid of the Cowl with no real creature types that matter. You know what I mean? And that's probably the best thing I could say about it. But there's also Giganto, Grand Pulse Ochu, and Bard's Bow here. Now, far as Giganto goes, totally normal guy. 4 mana, 3 and a green for a 4/4 frog. As long as you control 7 or more lands, he gets +2/+2. So he gets big when you got lands out, I guess. Again, nothing like we haven't seen before. It seems all right, though, in limited. Grand Pulse Ochu is your limited playable 1 green mana, 1/1 Death Touch guy. This is a plant beast. And if you pay 8 mana until end of turn, he gets +1/+1 for each permanent card in your graveyard. So he could get like +10/+10 pretty easily in some competitive environments. The problem is you still have to pay 8 mana for that, which is crazy. I guess if you had, infinite mana in your Agatha Soul Cauldron deck, then all your creatures have this ability, and now they get huge, and there's things to theorize, but is that better than the 1,000 other tricks that deck has? I don't think so. Best thing about this is the fact that it's a 1/1 Death Touch. I just kind of like those in general. But Bard's Bow is 3 mana, 2 and a green for an equipment with Job Select. You can equip this for 6 mana, by the way, but equipped creature gets +2/+2, has reach, and is a bard in addition to its other types. Why does it cost 6 mana to equip this? Crazy, man. It does start off as a 3 mana, 3/3 reach, which is a fine stat line in limited, I guess, but 6 mana to equip is right out. We're not doing that. So next, let's look at Colosseum Behemoth, Unexpected Request, and Sandworm. So we finally got to see a Behemoth creature. This one costs 7 mana. I guess that's appropriate. 5 and 2 green for a 7/7 beast with trample. When it enters, choose one. Destroy target artifact or enchantment, or draw a card. So doing like an acidic slime. Like, I'm going to do a bunch of stuff when I come into play. Choose one of these cool things I can do. And destroy an artifact or enchantment will always be kind of nice. And if you can't do that, draw a card's a nice backup. So again, I don't hate this if you have the ramp for it and sealed or something, but that is probably the only situation I would actually play this card in, no matter how tempting it might look. Now, Unexpected Request is a nice FF9 reference, but it's also your standard threaten effect in these limited environments. 3 mana, 2 and a red for a sorcery. Gain control of a creature till end of turn, untap it. Gain haste till end of turn. You may attach an equipment you control to that creature. If you do, unattach it at the beginning of the next end step. So cool specifically for equipment decks, which could often use a threaten effect. I'm somewhat partial to threatens, but I'm also kind of bored by them at this point because I'm pretty sure this is the 500th or so variant of a threaten effect that I've seen in my life. So you can't expect too much out of it, but sometimes this can be a decently playable card. Now, Sandworm, on the other hand, probably won't be. This is 5 mana, 4 and a red for a 5/4 worm with haste. When it enters, destroy target land. Its controller may search your library for a basic, put it on the battlefield tapped, shuffle up. So it's one of these. Ultimately, I'm also kind of not as impressed as I would have once been by a creature like this. It's certainly no Avalanche Riders, and most of you kids don't even know what that is. But next, there's some more red cards to look at. We got to look at Opera Love Song, nice, but also Hillgigas, another FF6 reference, and Call the Mountain Chocobo, but Opera Love Song, they say you can't hear a magic card, but obviously this refutes that. Opera Love Song costs 2 mana. It's 1 and a red for an instant, sorry. Choose one, exile the top 2 cards of your library. You may play those cards until your next end step. Choose 1 or 2 target creatures. Those creatures get +2/+0 until end of turn. That's the other mode on the card. I have to sing the song, especially since it's staring me in the face right there with the flavor text. But either way, man, this is actually not so bad because it's effectively 2 drawn cards or big pump spells on your mice. So again, maybe this is better than I originally thought. Can't really say the same thing for Hillgigas, though. This is 6 mana, 4 and 2 red for a 5/4 giant with trample and haste and mountain cycling too. So definition of one of these guys. I can't hate too much on these, land cycling creatures. And this one doesn't look half bad in limited, but don't try it anywhere outside of there because you're just going to get your butt handed to you alongside your other butt. Call the Mountain Chocobo. I don't even know what that means. Is 4 mana, 3 and a red for a sorcery. Search your library for a mountain card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. Create a 2/2 green bird creature token with whenever a land you control enters. This token gets +1/+0 till end of turn, and you can flash this back for 5 and a red. Didn't even need to put the flash back on it. It was already okay, I guess. I think that they, whatever the opposite of pushed is, they pulled this, I guess, in order for it to not be like too amazing looking, but At the same time, I guess it is some decent value, so I have to point it out. But there's some more cards today, if you can absolutely believe that. We got Blazing Bomb, Demon Wall, and Hectize here. Now, I've been wondering what a bomb would look like in Magic, and here it is. This is a single red mana for a 1/1 elemental whenever you cast a non-creature spell. If you spent 4 mana on it, this thing gets a +1/+1 creature counter. But anyway, also says blow up, tap, sacrifice it. It deals damage equal to its power to target creature. Activate only at sorcery speed. So kind of cute. You cast enough spells, or you just put enough counters on it another way, or maybe cast a pump spell on it, then suddenly it can tap and kill a lot of stuff, like a monstrous rage on this, and it can kill a 4 toughness creature. And yeah, that'll effectively take you 2 cards to kill 1 card, which you don't necessarily want to do, but it is a play you have to at least consider making sometimes in your aggro decks. That said, nowhere near standard play. Absolutely not in our standard, sorry, but it is a cool card in some ways because it's one of these like removal spells on a body, and it can blow up small creatures really easily, but even if it gets just like 2 counters, it can start blowing up stuff of consequence, and that's kind of cool. Demon Wall, on the other hand, is like really bad. This is 2 mana, 1 and a black for a 3/3 artifact creature. Demon Wall with Defender and Menace. As long as this creature has a counter on it, it can attack as though it did not have Defender. You can also pay 6 mana to put 2 +1/+1 counters on it, but I guess there's no like once per game or once per turn even restriction on that ability. But geez, 6 mana. 6 mana is so much, but I don't know. Maybe it's not really bad. It's a 2 mana 3/3. It's the kind of thing we usually see in blue in limited, right? A 2 mana 3/3 with Defender that can somehow shake its Defender off, Instead, we get it in black in this set, and it's a demon. Again, I've already pointed out why that might be somewhat relevant, especially just at 2 mana. It does block reasonably well for a couple of turns, and if you ever have enough mana, it eventually becomes a 5/5 menace that just gets in. So, I don't know. Maybe I'm being a little too hard on the little guy, but all things considered, I don't think it's going to go anywhere. Hectize over here is a burglar rat. That's really all it is, just a burglar rat without like relevant creature types. 2 mana, 1 and a black for a 1/1 ooze horror. Whenever this creature enters, each opponent discards a card. You get an each opponent. Is that different than burglar rat? I can't remember at this moment. So I guess each opponent might be a little bit better than I think, because if burglar rat is not worded that way, or other cards like burglar rat are not worded that way, then suddenly Hectize is kind of a 3-for-1. It's not actually that terrible when you think about it. But we also got to look at Cut Rub Fourier here. I'm not really sure that's how you pronounce the card. I don't know Final Fantasy 11, sorry. But there's Aramman. I know Aramman. He's been in a bunch of Final Fantasy games, as well as Aerith Rescue Mission here. Now, Fourier is 2 and a black. I was going to say just 3 mana for a 3/2 zombie horror. When he enters, destroy target creature that was dealt damage this turn, or exile up to 2 target cards from a single graveyard. Nothing to really see here, just a much, much better Scathe zombies, but, we've out-power crept Scathe zombies like 25 years ago, so it's not that big of a deal. Just these decent, options, especially post-combat phase, but still not that impressive. As far as the other stuff goes, Aramman is also not that impressive for like kind of one of my favorite, like usually early game Final Fantasy villains, and sometimes very late game. Kind of depends on which one you're playing. But this is 3 mana, 2 and a black for a 2/2 eye horror with flying and death touch. You can pay 3 and sacrifice another creature or artifact to draw a card. So the sacrifice ability on this is like way too steep to see play in most formats. It's definitely priced out, but at the very least, you get a Windrake with Death Touch, like a 3 mana 2/2 flyer is a Windrake, and those are kind of a baseline in limited. But putting Death Touch on it almost makes it like a Vampire Nighthawk without the lifelink or something, so it just blocks all day, and I kind of like that from a flavor perspective. It's in some ways, I really do, but just not a super impressive card for competitive play. Nonetheless, though, very limited playable in some ways. Aerith Rescue Mission, though, is 4 mana, 3 and a white for a sorcery. Choose one, either take the elevator, create 3 1/1 colorless hero creature tokens, or take 59 flights of stairs. If you know, you know. Tap up to 3 target creatures, put a stun counter on one of them. So for 4 mana at sorcery speed, this is too much for really either of these modes, I would say. But, that's the beauty of modal cards, is sometimes you'll take a little bit of too much mana in return for a card that does multiple things. I just don't think that's necessarily the case on this one. But there's more. Matter of fact, there's Gayla Cat, Scorpion Sentinel, and Eden, Seat of the Sanctum. Now, Gayla Cat has to go in the cat cube. It's a cat. We're going to see a few of those today, actually. 3 mana, 2 and a white for a 1/3 cat with flying and vigilance. As long as you control 2 or more artifacts, this creature gets +2/+0. So you could have a 3 mana, 3/3 flying vigilance, and it wouldn't even be that hard. But I still don't think this is competitive playable. I do think it's kind of cute and limited, though. I keep saying that about a lot of these cards. And even though some of them are, more powerful than others, I think this kind of sits at like the middle of the spectrum. You might play this from time to time because 2 decent keyword abilities are right there on the card, and it's not too hard to enable either. Especially if you've got Scorpion Sentinel in your deck in Limited. This is the first boss from FF7. It definitely felt like more than a 1/4. This is 2 mana, 1 and a blue for an artifact creature, robot scorpion, and as long as you control 7 or more lands, this creature gets +3/+0, so a 2 mana 4/4 if you've got a bunch of lands into play. Again, kind of like neat, but 7 lands is kind of a lot to ask for just a vanilla 4/4. So again, maybe you got some kind of Simic ramp thing going on at your pre-release. Like, you could consider playing this because it blocks pretty well until it gets the bonus, but again, it doesn't go anywhere outside of there. And honestly, again, I gotta say, this guy felt a lot stronger than this when I was fighting him. And we're back. Both me and Igby are back to check out this last card of the day. In the interim, he's just been drooling all over me. My pants are completely soaked. It's going to look really weird if I go outside with these pants on. But thanks for that, bud. I love you. But anyway, we got one more card to look at, and it supports a creature type that I have loved since I was a wee lad, whenever that was. It feels like I've always been a huge man. But anyway, I've loved this creature type since I was about 12 years old, and it just does not get quite enough support. So with that said, let's take a final look at Minw, White Mage. Now, Minw is 5 mana, 3 and 2 white for a 3/3 legendary human cleric with both vigilance and lifelink. And whenever you gain life, each of your clerics get a +1/+1 counter. Now, if you wanted to make this your commander, Scryfall currently returns 357 results for mono white clerics. So you're spoiled for choice when it comes to good creatures to play, because at least like 30 of those 357 creatures are probably at least all right. But if you didn't want it to be your commander because you want like more color options or something, well, there's some Orzhov cleric commanders you could put this in the 99 of. And once we start talking about Orzhov, we actually get into territory I know something about. Like, you could always put this in the 99 of Nalia Darnice, which doesn't just work with clerics, but if you wanted it just to be your cleric commander, it absolutely could be. And it's going to be able to like play clerics off the top of your library all game, which is pretty sick. But if you wanted something a little more cleric focused and more to my taste, you could play something like Aura Skyclave Hierophant, which does some like aristocracy things when you wanted to, and there's a fair number of clerics that'll let you sacrifice other creatures or whatever. So that, again, that's more my style. And this goes well with all your creatures that already get larger with life gain triggers, right? Your Ajani's Primate variants, there's a million of them at this point, and life gain decks like to play them, and a lot of them also happen to be clerics, which is really good for a deck like this. But apart from those creatures, those Ajani's Primates, clerics really doesn't have a whole lot of like oomph. You know what I mean? It doesn't have a whole lot of fighting power or anything, and this will change that very quick. Anyway, there are some really cool things about this card even outside of the commander environment, but I'm always going to like to see support for a creature type that doesn't get enough, and clerics has always been one of those creature types my entire life. But that is finally all for today. It seems like the common dump day, right? We got a bunch of cards from Weekly MTG like we normally would on common dump day, but we're still scheduled for a couple of days of, 10 or 11 previews at a time coming out. And then Friday, the full card image gallery will be available on the Magic the Gathering website. So we've still got a couple of days worth of previews at the very least left out of this thing. And I'm imagining that they are saving some of the best for last. Why haven't we seen Rydia yet? Where is Rydia at? Plus a bunch of other characters for that matter. But on your way out, make sure you do all the YouTube stuff, y'all. Make sure you hit the thumb button. It's shaped like a thumb. It's hard to miss. You get +1 good person points if you hit the thumb button. Apart from that, you can also, share the video around, subscribe to the sandwich, trying to get to 150K now. Totally doable because of viewers like you. But something else that is doable because of viewers like you is, I should really put a joke there, but it's this whole channel. As a matter of fact, that's because of the Patreon. If you want to, you can go over there, link in the description, and throw $1 in the Patreon pot to vote on what we're doing this upcoming season. I've actually got a poll out right now on what the first commander deck we should cover is, and At the moment, Black Mage Waltz number 3 is just absolutely destroying everything else in that pile. So if you want to go affect that ballot box, then maybe now would be a good time to throw $1 the channel's way. But appreciate all my Patreon supporters as always. You guys keep the channel around to begin with and to end with. But anyway, y'all, I am Deb from The Blaze. That's all I've got for this one. Just hit me up in the comments section. Let me know how you feel about the entire spiel. There were so many cards today, so if you maybe thought one of those crappy cards was better than I thought it was, then let me know why. Down there, I read your stuff. But anyway, y'all, I will catch you cats later. Thanks for watching, Wizards. Spread love and be kind.